Hi, welcome back to Grains in Small Places, and today I'm going to show you a sourdough peppermint chocolate cupcake, and it has a cream cheese buttercream icing, and it is so good. It's so moist and delicious. Everyone will love them, and it's perfect for Christmas or the holidays. And they're being made with fresh milled flour. So, let me show you how I get started. Okay, to get started, the night before I'm going to mill my flour, and I'm going to mill about 1 1/3 cups of soft white wheat. It's going to get me about 2 cups of flour. I will have all of this written in the recipe that I will link below. And then I'm going to brew my tea. This is a secret ingredient I have. I brew just a regular cup of black tea and let it cool down to room temperature. I also pull 2 sticks of butter out of my refrigerator, so 1 cup so they can soften overnight. And then after my tea has cooled down, I pour that into my fresh milled flour. And then I add a 1/2 cup of light olive oil. I'm going to just stir all of that to incorporate, and a 1/2 cup of my sourdough starter. And this is Bubbles. It is my sourdough starter. We've named him Bubbles. If you've seen my videos before, you know this. And you can use the sourdough starter at any stage, whether it be fed or not. You can use what they call discard or starter, either way. It will work for this recipe. I'm going to use a 1/2 cup of my sourdough starter, and then I'm going to just mix that in. And this starter, if you've seen in the past, I generally make my starters pretty thick, kind of like a loose dough ball. And this is what it will look like the next day after the starter has done its job. I just kind of set Bubbles to the side, and we'll feed him together here in a minute. Okay, and now I'm going to cover it with some cling film and let it sit on my counter at room temperature overnight until we're ready to do the next step. Usually I am kind of unofficial about feeding him. I kind of know the texture that I like and the ratio, so I really just eyeball it, but I'm going to go ahead and get my scale out this time so I can show you a little more accurate what I normally do. So I'm going to take my little bit of starter that I have left. I really only have a few scrapings in the jar still, and I'm going to put that in and I'm going to weigh it. That way I know how much I have. Looks like maybe about 22 grams. So I'm going to take that 22 grams, and a lot of people will just feed it with the exact same water amount and the exact same fresh flour amount. But I'm going to go ahead, and I like to double that, which is going to have me end up right around maybe, looks like I settled on about 65 grams. I'm just going to stir that up so the starter and water gets all spread out evenly and incorporated. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my flour in. Okay, so it looks like I settled on about 126 grams. And before you start measuring, obviously you want to make sure that you zero out your scale. Use the tare button there. And now I'm just going to incorporate the entire thing together. And to me, visually, it just looks a little dry. So I still want to add just a little more water in there. You don't want any dry flour showing. Otherwise, it's more difficult. It takes a lot longer for the starter to do its job and work it through. There are a lot of people that like a very liquidy sourdough starter, and that's fine too. It's just preference of how you like to work with it. I find if I make it a stiffer, more solid sourdough starter, then I don't have to feed it quite as often. So I will get a whole 24 hours at room temperature on my counter before he needs fed again, or I can just pop him in my refrigerator and leave him there for a week until I have to feed it again. There are occasional times where I will mix it up a little bit more wet, just because of certain recipe. I know pancakes, for example, I like to have it a little bit more of a wet consistency, just a little bit though. I actually have a link to my pancakes up here at the top if you're interested. Okay, and then after it's all incorporated and I like the consistency, I'm going to put it back in my jar. And I usually like to put it in a clean jar. Some people don't do that. That's all preference as well. I like to use the mason jar lids. I will put the metal part upside down and then twist the ring on lightly and not too tight so that my starter can breathe. It really does need to get air. You can't seal this off. Then I just use my little dry erase marker and make a little line and mark it with Bubbles. All right, and now it's the next morning, and I asked Matt if he would try to make these cupcakes using my printed out recipe. I just wanted to have someone make these cupcakes with my recipe for the first time just to check. So he's going to start out with 2 eggs and then add 2 cups of sugar and 1 teaspoon of salt. And then 2 teaspoons of vanilla. I love my homemade vanilla, as you know. I can put a link to that recipe above here if you're interested. And then we're going to use 3/4 cup of dry cocoa powder and 1 cup of whole milk. I like to use the Fairlife milk for our family with lactose sensitivities. And 2 teaspoons of baking soda. And that's probably what you're going to want to put in last, actually. And then we're going to put 1 teaspoon of peppermint extract in here. Nice tip, if you like a super peppermint flavor, the tea that I brewed at the beginning, you could brew a peppermint tea and use that instead. It will just amplify the peppermint flavor. But I find that the 1 teaspoon of peppermint extract in the cupcake only is a nice balance that will be received by most palates well. Any more than that may end up being too strong. He's just going to mix that all in until everything's incorporated. The baking soda and the acid in the sourdough starter help the whole cupcake recipe to rise, which makes it so the cupcakes are light, airy, fluffy, and super moist. That way they're not going to be dense or hard or not the right texture. I love how you can see all of the bubbles with that sourdough acid and baking soda reaction in there. It's already starting to want to rise. Okay, now it's all incorporated. We'll just set that to the side. He's going to try out this rice trick that I always rave about. It may have not needed to be used in this one because we did buy the foil liners, so they don't tend to leak through like the paper ones do. But we went ahead and did it because we really like how it makes the cupcakes and muffins turn out. And then go ahead and put the liners in. I find that a 1/4 cup measuring cup is about the right amount of batter that we need. So I let him know that little secret. So just use that measuring cup. Go ahead and put about a 1/4 cup into each well. Make sure that when you fill the 1/4 cup, it's not domed over. Otherwise, you'll have a little bit too much batter in the wells. And I think you'll see later on here that we had that issue just a little bit, which caused some of those to come out a little bit over the wells. And also a few of them sunk just because they had just a little bit too much batter. So just make sure that you're not putting more than the 1/4 cup in there at a time to get that perfectly flat top cupcake that makes it really easy and nice to put the frosting on. So this weekend we were still in the Palm Springs area hanging out with several other families that are also RVing full time, and we got to go to a Native American Pow Wow. This is their grand entry with the dancing. It was just a really cool time. Let's listen in. And we also got to visit a skate park in the area with another family, and you can take your bike, roller skates, rollerblades, skateboards, longboards, scooters, all kinds of things. This place was just really awesome. And as you can see, Cody had quite a bit of fun learning some new tricks and getting to ride on different kinds of terrain. Okay, and back to the cupcakes. And you want to let these sit in the tin for about 5 minutes before you try to remove them for cooling. Okay, and as you can see here, what I was talking about, how some of these got a little bit overfilled, which is okay. They're still going to taste delicious. Once you put the frosting on, you won't even know it. But I know another indication that they were slightly overfilled on the first round here, at least anyways, is that I normally get 3 full trays out of this. And as you'll see a little bit further on, we didn't quite get 3 full trays. So generally this recipe will make 36 cupcakes. And he's using just a little butter knife just to knock the rice bits off. You can go ahead and just reuse this rice with the next baking of the next round of cupcakes. You don't have to refill the wells with new rice or anything like that. I'm lazy. I usually just use my finger. Okay, and then he's just going to go ahead and load in the next batch of batter. That way the next round can get baked. I will have a link below to my recipe. That way you can just go right to my website and blog and print it off, and you'll have that for your recipe collection. Also in the description, I will post a link to my mill and my mixer, the soft wheat berries, and all my other kitchen gadgets that I may have forgotten to mention. I'll just put a link down there. And don't forget to check out my website at grainsandsmallplaces.net, where you can find so many other recipes. I am adding recipes every week, so don't forget to check that out. I also am at Facebook at Grains and Small Places. I usually will post on there when I have a new video come out or when I have a new blog post. Also, I put tips and tricks and things like that on there. It's kind of fun. So if you want to follow me over there, head over to my Facebook page. I will try to put a link below in that one as well. And then we just repeat the process all over again, filling them, baking them, and then letting them cool for 5 minutes, putting them on a cooling rack, and then baking the next round. If you have a bigger oven than we do, then you probably could bake more than one at a time. If you have another cupcake tin, you could probably also do this, but I only have one cupcake tin, so we just have to do the rounds. All in all, I think he did a really great job. They turned out really good, and we were able to share these with some of our friends, and also we saved a few back to put in our freezer. These cupcakes actually freeze really well. We are able to put them in our freezer on a baking sheet, just flash freeze them for about 2 minutes until they become hard, and then you can just put them in a freezer bag or a freezer safe container, and they'll stay frozen for about 3 to 4 months with no issue. You just get them out, let them sit at room temperature for about an hour or two, and they taste just like you just made them. It's a simple trick that we love to do. That way I can make these once, have them in the freezer, and still enjoy them in the future. And here's where you'll see what I was talking about. We didn't quite get 3 full trays here, so next time he'll just fill them with just a little bit less. Oh, who am I kidding? I love baking, so I'll probably be the one that makes them next. I am planning on using this recipe and trying out tons of new flavors, probably after the holidays. That way I can have all kinds of delicious treats to share with everybody, and they'll all be just a little bit different because this base cupcake recipe is so moist and delicious. They are just divine. Okay, and so he kind of asked me if I would make the frosting. He didn't want to do that. So I went ahead and used that softened butter that I had pulled out the night before. I used 2 sticks of butter, which is also 1 cup of butter. I used salted butter. You could use unsalted butter, but if you do, you'll just want to add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt to this. It just helps balance out the flavor. I'm going to let it just start to get a little bit fluffy before I add anything else. And then I will start adding my powdered sugar. We're going to use somewhere between 3 and 4 cups of powdered sugar. And of course, when you start mixing it in, you want to start out slow so you don't get that sprayed everywhere. And here, if you, again, like the strong peppermint flavor, you could add just a tiny bit of that peppermint extract to the frosting. But we found that the balance between the frosting and the cupcake was just harmonious. I didn't feel like the frosting needed any peppermint flavoring, especially when you sprinkle it with the little candy cane pieces on top. And then again, I'm going to grab my homemade vanilla and use about 2 teaspoons of that. And then I'm going to use about 8 ounces of soft cream cheese. Now, I love to make my own cream cheese. I will put a link here if you're interested in that recipe. I love to make it at the same time that I make my yogurt, and it's all done in my Instant Pot. So if you want to check that out, it'll be up here somewhere. And I do like to put my cream cheese in last after I've already whipped the butter. Cream cheese, if it gets whipped too long, it tends to turn liquidy, so I didn't really want that to happen. It has happened to me in one of my earlier videos. I can link that if you want to see that fail where we came up with a whole new recipe for frosting. And then after I made this, I started with the 3 cups of powdered sugar, and then I gave it a little taste. And you always want to taste it just to make sure, because it's all to your desired sweetness. I honestly think 3 cups is enough for the frosting, but my husband and my children outvoted me, and that's why I added the 4th cup. In tasting it again, still delicious, and they really loved it. As you can see, it gets all nice and smooth and just a beautiful texture. And then you'll see me just take the beater out and scrape the sides. I just want to make sure that there's no little pieces of dry flour or butter hiding from me. And I'm using my Christmas spatula. Finally, during Christmas time. I'd like to use this little guy all year round, as you'll see in a lot of my other videos. You can tell that this mixer just does a really great job making this frosting. But you can just see how luscious and velvety this icing looks when it's done. Perfect. Okay, and Matt's going to go ahead and put this in our Ziploc bag here. I don't have a pastry bag. I may get one in the future. Got to get every last drop. We don't want to waste any. And I'm willing to bet that that bowl and spatula probably got licked clean. He's just going to pop that in there and then cut off the tip and go ahead and apply the frosting. You just want to make sure that the cupcakes are completely cooled before you apply the frosting. Otherwise, you'll have just kind of a little melted mess. I love it when we can work together and kind of have teamwork on projects. We both try to do that in all of our steps of life. We just think it makes for just a better relationship of being able to work together. And just doing this on these 2 trays just made it seem a lot easier, and it just went a little smoother. So we just went ahead and put them on the trays and then applied the frosting. And then I grabbed those peppermint candy cane pieces that I found, and I went ahead and sprinkled those on top. Of course, if you don't have the pieces, you could take a candy cane and kind of just smash it up and just sprinkle those on top, and they just made them so cute and festive, perfect for the holidays. And they also added a great amount of peppermint flavor. It was truly the perfect balance. I highly recommend these cupcakes for any holiday get-together or Christmas party or anything like that that you have coming up. And I'm going to be honest, right here is the point in editing where I really just wanted to lick my screen. It just looks so delicious because my mouth is watering. I know how good these taste. In fact, I think I'm going to grab one out of my freezer and start letting it defrost so I can have one while I'm editing right now. I hope you enjoyed spending time with us in our kitchen this morning. A special thanks to Matt for helping out making these cupcakes.
If you like what you saw, give us a thumbs up and maybe subscribe to our channel for more recipes down the road.
And don't forget to check out our blog at grainsandsmallplaces.net for all these recipes and more. So until next time, thanks for stopping by Grains and Small Places.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.